What the heck is on?
All right, we're live. We are live on YouTube and on X and on michaelheath.tv. And so for the next hour or so, we're going to be talking all things political and religious, right? There's two things you should never talk about.
Never talk about politics.
Religion and politics. And we're going to talk about both of them for an hour. So there.
Let's do it.
Take that, Internet.
Same time.
And joining me today are Matt Rhodes, who's the one talking over me. Don't do that to the host, you.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Matt Rhodes is the leader of the John Birch Society in all of New England, the John Birch Society. You've heard of them. They're that shady conspiracy theory group that hates communists, right? You've heard of them, right, Matt? Isn't that it?
Oh, yeah, they're somewhat familiar.
So, and we also have Matt. I'll let you introduce this lovely young lady who's joining us.
Oh, this is Linda Landry. She is our chapter leader down in Westminster, Massachusetts. She's a great gal. If we had about 10 of her, we could take back the state of Massachusetts. It doesn't take that many Birchers to come and, bring back a state to Americanism. And I have to tell you, she's been a source of inspiration for me. She's been fighting the MBTA problem that's going on down there, MPCA, and she'll probably want to fill you in on some of the details about that down through the road. But she's a great lady. She has all my admiration.
Oh, boy.
Great. So I'm going to warn both of you. I love to interrupt, and you have not just permission, but it's an order. Interrupt me. It makes for interesting media. Okay, it makes for interesting media. So you're not going to offend me or anything if you interrupt me. So it makes the whole thing flow better. So the other thing I want to mention, just by way of advertisement, michaelheath.org is my website, and there's a subscription button there. You can subscribe if you want an email. Starting yesterday, I'm back to doing what I was doing just after email appeared in the world, way back 30 years ago or so. And I'm doing a daily issue summary, is what it's called. And so if you're interested, it's free. I take 3 issues, political, religious issues, and I write whatever I think about them.
That's great.
And it comes out Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, so weekdays. So if you're like me, and you hate email, especially from people like me who are not, that are where you subscribe, right? And you can never unsubscribe. Oh, that's the other thing about my email. There's an unsubscribe button at the bottom, and it works. I tested it. So,
man, am I allowed to advertise you? Because I think we have a great friendship. There's a lot of interrupting going on, and a lot of posturing and egomaniacal behavior going on. I think the success of any friendship rests on that. Okay. So
that's right.
For you viewers out there, find your best friend and interrupt him every time he's talking. So
right. And moving right into the meat of this show. So Matt is old school, right? So you know what he did last night? He stayed up all night and he created a full page of notes that I have right here in the old days. I used to do this, right? I was a media guy in the legacy media, so I used to do interviews all the time, and we called these things talking points. And so he sent it to me, and it says tomorrow's suggested itinerary, and there's enough meat here to do a year's worth of shows like this, a year's worth of shows. But we're gonna jump right in. We're gonna jump right in with number 1, Charlie Kirk, okay? The tragedy, and then the rest is notes. So this is not a true talking point. See, if Matt, I'm looking at you, Matt. See, my camera's over here. You're right here, though. You're right there for me. So I'm looking at you, Matt. Then if these were talking points, then I'd be able to read this because it's in my voice, because I'm the host. And see, the idea there is I don't have to do any work at all. All I do is read. it. But so anyway, Charlie Kirk, and then these are your notes. I can read them for you if you want, or you can just.
Sure, let's do it. I want the whole world. I've been dying to get on this because this conversation has to happen. Okay, it has to happen.
Yeah, it does. So you write the tragedy, Kirk as a knife fighter. Well, that's provocative. Brilliant, patient, either solid in God or arrogant, definitely trained, singleness of purpose, rescuer or instigator. What did I tell you? I mean, that right there is the whole show. Go.
Well, so we have this conversation going on about Charlie Kirk, and it drifts from a hagiography to a hate speech. On the other side, from one side to the other. Charlie
I'm from Maine. I'm from Maine.
Hagiography.
Okay. So, go ahead.
So
what is a hagiography?
A person is, they're canonized in, say, like the Catholic Church, but there's definitely exaggerations. Somebody might see a saint levitate a little bit, but by the time the story gets out there, the guy's flying through the air. We don't. It's hard to separate the truth out about. Well, let's look at the truth versus the hero worship and what humans create in their minds about a person. So I've watched Charlie Kirk for years. I watched him right from the beginning. And so there's things that occurred to me in my mind that, first of all, the guy had to be a skilled knife fighter. And by that, he's looking for cut points. He's looking for quick, if you've ever been trained by a Marine to do a knife fighter, or if you've ever had a knife taken out on you, which I'm imagining that most of your viewers have not. But at some point, if you've been in a knife fight, you understand that you're trying to disable the person as fast as possible.
And what you're talking about here, correct me if I'm wrong, is polemics. You're not saying that Charlie was a trained knife fighter, right?
No.
Yeah.
I'm saying polemics. He's a skilled tactician. And
polemicist, right? Skilled polemicist.
See, that's way more syllables that I'm allowed to use in one day, and so I have like an allotment, and it ends up being that movie like Tarzan, from Greystoke, Razor, and then I'm trying to get down to simpler words. So he's a great debater, and sometimes if you've taken debate classes, being correct is not always the point. The point is to stop your opponent in their tracks, So if you take a debate class like I have, they will test you on scoring points versus actually making sense. And so Charlie was really good at that. When he couldn't answer the question, he'd stop people right in their tracks. And he stuck right to the point all the time. So there's nothing not to admire about this guy. However, when you have a guy who's a hero and he's attached to an organization of some kind, then who he is and what he is becomes, changed. It becomes that organization and its intent. And so who he is becomes weathered by that, and we have to ask ourselves, how much good was he really doing? And so, that's where if you can't have that conversation, then you're not living in an American world. That's the problem. You have to be able to say, well, this was great, but this was bad. And that's, so Charlie Kirk, and here's the thing that really bothered me the other day. If anybody didn't cry,
this is a good point. This is a good point for me to jump in and tell you listeners. I see I've got. So I use a program called StreamYard. I'm still getting used to it, but I see on my screen that I have 3 people viewing it. I don't know if that's on YouTube or on X, but hi to the 3 people. You can say hi to me in the comments, and I will see the comments, and I can actually put your comments on the screen. So if you want to ask a question, then you can ask a question or you can make a comment, and I would welcome that. So as time goes on with this live stream, I'm sure I'll be getting more viewers. But so if you're listening and you want to say hi, do it. I'll see it, and I might even put it up on the screen, or if you want to ask a question. Sorry to interrupt you, Matt. You were pivoting to your next point. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the point is that if anybody didn't cry about what happened to Charlie Kirk, I can't imagine how heartless you are. I cried my eyes out that entire day. And it started occurring. I started thinking about these childhood stars. They start out when they're very young. Charlie started very young. And there's a certain point in time, if you've ever been a political handler like I have, handling politicians and their PR life, there's a certain point in time where you're going to pull them out of the game. Now you look at Hollywood; they whorize children till they're adults, and they just, their whole life becomes destroyed and becomes whatever they can market out of that person's existence. And in my estimation, Charlie Kirk should have been pulled out of that knife fight a long time ago. He was getting way more effective. He was not only was he was turning from like a polemicist, as you called it, to a counselor, and that was very dangerous. He was approaching people in ways that were purely, his heart was there, and he cared. You could see it. He was changing, and that made him very, very dangerous. And somebody in his circle should have said, "Okay, Charlie, you're getting too good. You're going to get killed." And anybody,
yeah. And Linda, you're going to have to be really assertive with us to get a word in edgewise. So, but let me pause here and turn to you and see if you'd like to add anything or make any comments. Go ahead.
Well, he was killed because he was reaching the young people and they were listening to him. And sometimes he was changing minds and hearts, and he had to be stopped for that. And he was effective. So the radicals want to affect the young people. They don't want him doing it. So that's what made him dangerous. But I never thought of your point, Matt, to pull him out.
That would be the most responsible thing. So you have these, these putzes all over on social media, supposed conservatives. They were happy to use Charlie Kirk as a body bag. Like you see in the movies where Steven Seagal is puts the dead guy in front of him and he's getting shot so he can continue fighting. This is what Charlie Kirk became. He became a shield, a human shield, and it was very selfish in my estimation. Now, the whole world's going to disagree with me, but the fact is that no one was willing to do what he did. There might have been a couple of people that were willing to do it safely from a stage. They were willing to do it from behind the desk, writing notes, and now they're going to laud him. Look at the great martyr that he was. But the fact is that a good person, a good friend would have pulled him out of that knife fight. There's a great Star Trek episode about this from Deep Space Nine, where Worf is fighting this racist beast, called the Jemadar. He's got 3 broken ribs. His jaw is broken. He's got a severed artery somewhere or something. It's crazy. He's dying, and he's not going to get out of the fight. And finally, his general pulls him out of the fight and says, "You're going to die." And so this is what I'm saying. Charlie Kirk was ready to evolve, and they didn't let him, and that really bothers me a lot. So the responsibility.
That's it.
I think it was
Go ahead, Linda. Go ahead.
For conservatives, it was a wake-up call to how dangerous these terrorist groups are, and I don't know who is responsible, but this hatred online, and they didn't see this coming, and it's a wake-up call for Americans.
That's a great point, Matt. And now I'm going to say something absolutely forbidden. Candace Owens is dead on. She is dead on. Why? Because she is raising the questions that nobody else will raise. And the reason she's raising these questions, 2 reasons. One, she was very close to Charlie personally, because the 2 of them literally, in a public relations sense, in terms of their platforms, they literally grew up together. Candace is a very young woman. She's about the same age, I would guess, as Charlie. And they rose up in power together, both of them. They traveled together. They spoke together on the same stages countless times in national tours in the United States of America. They were close, and they remained close until he was murdered. And Candace took it personally. God bless her.
Yeah,
of course she did.
Right.
And now she's asking all the right questions. And the most important question, not because Candace says it, I've lost track of how many times since Charlie was murdered, the president of a foreign nation has gone to the entire planet and declared that he didn't do it.
Right.
What is up with that? What is up with that? I mean, that's like saying, investigate me. Is Putin doing that? Is Xi doing that? Is Rocket Man doing that? No, Netanyahu.
Legislators just went to Israel
Yeah.
on an all-expense paid tour of the country. That's very odd. Like they don't do. Ireland doesn't do that. Ireland doesn't say, "Hey, state we don't have." I mean, if these people were going to Russia, right, then there would be like if we had a bunch of state legislators from Maine going to Russia, there'd be big questions. And now, Hamas is evil. I mean, at what point in time are the American people going to say that we are literally controlled by Israel?
It's not even a debating point now since Charlie's murder. And thanks to Candace, you know that her viewership that the platforms will reveal. I hope you're not one of those people that believes those numbers of likes and views and all that stuff, because that's all manipulated by AI and the algorithms. But according to the numbers, she's way up in the millions. My guess is if she stays on this path, thinking objectively and doing the job that the mainstream media was supposed to do, but never did because newspapers and radio stations and television stations were all bought off and controlled by agenda-driven forces since the beginning, since they appeared. But she's giving us a masterclass, Candace is right now, in journalism, in investigative journalism. And she's doing it.
Yeah, she's amazing. I mean, did you hear her saying she was, well, the thing was, and this is going to announce my prejudice, on this topic, but Charlie Kirk was not only rejecting Israel, he was actually beginning to embrace Catholicism. And I have to tell you, for a man like Charlie Kirk to embrace Catholicism, there is a movement within the Catholic Church that's massive, and it may not even be tied to the Church of Rome, but it doesn't matter. The fact is that he was praying the rosary, he was going to mass pretty daily. His wife was a Catholic, and this would be disaster for the globalists because Catholics do not tolerate globalism as a rule, even though, the last Pope was very friendly to, SDGs and stuff like that.
Right. And also the traditions, the history, and the dogmatic teachings of the Roman Catholic Church there's a history there that goes all the way back to the murder of the Messiah,
right?
Who, by the way, was Jewish. So there's a history that goes all the way back to then with the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes,
that's much discussed theologically, much debated theologically and philosophically and legally and culturally and politically and every other way, going back centuries within the Roman Catholic Church. And often
what happens is this usurious system, it starts breaking down because now, I sent you a couple slides. You cannot exist within a society that doesn't put Jesus Christ first in all things. Okay. And we have to start having another discussion with ourselves. It's like, why were we created? Well, we were created to love, know, and serve God and be with him in heaven. That's the simplest thing. That should be across all Christian denominations. There's nobody that
Which slide do you want?
Well, let's go ahead and start with the first one, and I'll explain, why, so this is basically, we go back to probably 1847, the beginning of the progressive movement. Let me just remind your viewers that progressives are not Democrats. Progressive use Democrats and Republicans alike. You can see them in your, I'll come to your town, I'll do a presentation. If you're in New England, I'll explain to you who your progressives are and who your Democrats are and who your Republicans are. They are different people, and the progressives were created by a man by the name of Charles Merriam. He was a German political scientist. He studied at Columbia University under a man by the name of Frank Goodnow. And he wrote a book called The History of American Political Theories. He also wrote a book here called The History of American Political Ideas. And he wrote a book here called The Making of Citizens and this one here called Systematic Politics. And when you start reading his stuff, these guys were bent on changing the nature of how Americans thought about the purpose of government. That's why that conversation is so important to the John Birch Society. What is the purpose of government? Why do we exist? What is government supposed to be doing? And so they had to, they use Rockefeller money, Rockefeller, the Carnegie endowments, and they just kept using this money to put in the school system to change how people thought about what government was. And so, and it's around this time that government began to become the people that did things for us. They were administrators. And that's when you started hearing people talking about he's the right man for the job. You hear people talking about politics. They talk about their elected officials. He's good at business. He knows what he's doing. He can get things done. And the concept of America being like changing over to a business model was very strong at this time. That's what they wanted purposely. They did not want a government that was to leave the people alone. So anyway, so he drafted FDR's New Deal. He was part of the Brownlow Committee, and then he was part of I'm not going to go into that this morning because I'm way too tired, but he was part of the Reorganization Act. And basically the Reorganization Act was called The President Needs Help. And because they created all these federal committees, and then they realized, they need to change the executive office of the president. They need to have an office that can monitor and manage all these groups. And so he was also the author of the Administrative Procedures Act. And if you don't know this, every state has an Administrative Procedures Act, which governs their relationship and how they use federal money from the Federal Reserve, a usurious bank that charges interest, every time you use this green stuff, right, that's in your wallet. If you read The Creature from Jekyll Island, you understand that the use of this money actually increases your debt. Cash is not king. Cash is a credit card that is initiated by the Federal Reserve. So it's a usurious system that we live in, and that's going to have to collapse for America to survive. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll show you. I'll give you a little bit more on that. So,
Yeah. And listen, as I do that, I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to bring Charles in. Do you know this guy?
I know Charles Darling. How you doing, Charles?
I'm sitting here listening to you guys, and I want to say something, but you can't hear me.
I can hear you right now. No, go ahead.
That's my bad. I apologize. I just noticed that you were in there. So welcome, Charles. My name's Mike. Good to meet you.
My name is Charlie.
Good to meet you, Charlie. Where do you live?
Methuen.
Massachusetts. I'm sorry.
Me too.
Yeah, Maine isn't much better, but anyway, it's Maine.
Well,
so
Maine has problems.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, we get that a lot from Massachusetts. Oh, we're sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, Charles,
I want to add something to what Matt was saying about the knife biting.
Yeah.
Think
Go
about
for it.
this for a minute. During World War II, the United States had, these fighter pilots in the Pacific, and they became like what they call aces. They scored a lot of hits. They would rotate them back to the training areas to train the new pilots. In other words, they get them out of the fight. The Japanese never did that. The Japanese have never thought about sending the experienced guys back to train the new guys. And the new guys were really, really bad because nobody really trained them.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what Matt was saying.
You have to pull them out of the equation for a while, train more people. That's why the John Birch Society, again, if I'm pitching too much and I've said it too many times, that's why we're the singular most effective organization in the United States, because we bring people in like Linda Landry, we train them, and then she trains other people. And that's how it works. It's just Charlie's, can I say this, Mike? Sorry, I'm taking over your show. You know how I am, right? Charlie has been a member of the John Birch Society since 52. No, how long has it been, Charlie?
1947. No. You have either you have a memory lapse or you're just being a wise guy.
I'm from New Jersey. What do you want? Give me a break.
Well, I understand that. I'm sorry. Anyways, I joined in 1965.
Great. You joined 4 years after I was born. I was 4 years old when you joined the John Birch Society.
What you made a good point, Matt, that I don't know if anybody's properly trained enough to take Charlie's Kirk's, position, kind of, to keep TPUSA going. I hope there's enough people, but he was the best one. But was he training others? There are others that are involved, that are speaking, but others.
Well, I'm just thankful that Ben Shapiro is going to sacrifice himself and step in. And
Yeah.
Scary.
Well,
so I'm being satirical here.
just a little bit. Yeah. I was going to say this, Mike, that I said something online. I got a lot of flack about it. If that's the correct word. Single syllable words I'm not good with, but I said something. Turning Point USA should die with Charlie Kirk, and that meant I hated Charlie Kirk, and so all the crazy people they come at you. Can't believe you.
I think you may be right, and here's why. The historical fact about Turning Point USA is that it was started with an immense amount of money that came from a particular ideological viewpoint, Zionism.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, and we're talking millions of dollars, and that influence on that organization is stronger today than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Than it's ever been. And that's one of the issues that's being raised legitimately here by Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and countless others online.
Yeah.
That issue is being raised and debated thanks to the internet. That's the only reason it's happening. And I almost hate to say this, but thanks probably in large part to Elon Musk. And the reason I hate to say that is because Elon's policy with X is freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. And it's obvious that the algorithm on X is written in such a way that people who are smaller accounts that are raising these questions that Tucker and Candace are raising, that those accounts are being squelched and silenced, and they're being manipulated on Elon Musk's X. But on Facebook and YouTube and others, Instagram, you just get your account canceled without explanation. They just delete you.
I want to tell your Jewers, your Jewers, listen to me, your viewers, that I'm actually Jewish, and okay. And I would recommend everybody in your audience read this book by Rabbi Zoli called Before the Dawn. And that I approach this from a standpoint of being hearing stories about what happened in Auschwitz, about how the Jews were treated by each other. My worldview is affected by my cultural background. I am a Catholic, but my mother was Jewish, and my great uncles and aunts, they were all Jewish, and I met all of them, and they were anyway. So that's time for another topic. So there's no prejudice here on my mind. There's great people of all faiths. We're talking about a particular mindset of people, and I became aware of it very recently about what Zionism really was, and it was very surprising to me. There was a group of Christians that were, somebody actually told me, "Oh no, you have to love Israel," and that was like the first time I'd ever heard it. It was only 6 months ago. And I thought, well, this is weird. I never heard of this before. You go to the Pentecostals. Oh, you got to speak in tongues, or you got to be baptized again, or something. But then suddenly I was around a bunch of Christians that were telling me that I have to love the nation of Israel, and I've been trying to get my head around it for a very long, since that time, 6 months, and now Charlie Kirk is dead. So
it's go ahead, Linda. Go ahead.
Maybe the same forces that were okay with his killing is now taking over TPUSA and not putting it in the right direction.
When I was the leader of the Christian Civic League of Maine for 20 years, back before I resigned in 2009, and for 20 years before that, I was surrounded by this ideology of Zionism. Wow. Back then, it wasn't a headline issue like it is today. What it was at that time for me was a doctrinal truth that you dare not question, and it concerned the doctrines taken from the Bible, supported by the Bible, within Protestantism that had to do with eschatology. In other words, future things. That's where it showed up in my universe. It showed up as a theological construct within eschatology. And of course, nobody, right? You hear the word eschatology, everybody goes, "Oh, what the heck?" And they go to sleep, right? But now it's different. Now it's different because it's front page now. Whether the Zionists want it to be or not, it is. It's front page globally now. And it's not just some religious doctrine called eschatology with some guy that writes a popular book called The Late Great Planet Earth. And then there's a bunch of movies made about the end times. I forget their names. I didn't go see them. But, immensely popular movies in the English-speaking world. It's not about that anymore. It's not about that. Zionism is being exposed in a political sense now, and related to the topic of genocide because of what's going on in Gaza. So everything's shifting, and that's what I think, Matt and Charlie and Linda. That I think that's Charlie's conscience was doing business with this issue, with what we're talking about.
Yeah,
that's my sense. His conscience. He was thinking about these things seriously, right?
I mean, there's, our founder Robert Welch was having conversations very uncomfortable conversations about Eisenhower. These were, this was a man that, probably, borderline genius and possibly autistic. If you listen to him talk, and that's fine. But he, that's when you start getting people saying, well, this doesn't make sense, and you put these three facts together, we would all be very concerned if suddenly you'll see articles in certain periodicals that talk about, whether or not, the Pope has this global influence, and you say, well, okay, you're scared about that, but you're not scared about Zionism. You're scared, so you're willing to go after the Catholic Church about their global influence, but we're not scared about an entire belief systems that's telling the entire Christian world and the entire world, for that matter, how to believe, how to think. And if you don't think that way, you're going to be punished. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your friendships. People are going to doubt you. And, the fact is Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens just said it live. She streamed it. She said, Charlie, make the next step. Okay. You're too smart to be a Protestant. That's what she said to him. She was saying, and now listen, when I say Protestant, I'm talking about Protestantism. Charlie's Protestant, Linda's Protestant. If they were all I've met in my entire life, they were the greatest people that you'll ever meet in your entire life. They were wonderful people of God. But Candace Owens was, saying to Charlie, look, you're almost there. Let's go. Let's move. And I think that made him even more dangerous, because
now you are touching on the conversation that's coming next after this issue with Israel is resolved, and it will be resolved. Yeah. And I think it'll be resolved soon. And the reason I think that is because Yitzhak Shamir or something, one political leader from Israel, observed that no organized Israeli government, Jewish government, has lasted more than 80 years since ever in all of history. And this particular iteration of legal governmental Jewry called Israel is now 77 years old. In 3 years, it turns 80. And so historically, it's never lasted more than 80 years. And they always end for the same reason, too, which is chutzpah. Chutzpah, they go too far. They go too far. They become absolutists with respect to their ideology or their religion or whatever you want to call it, their philosophy, their ethnicity, whatever it is. They become absolutists about it, and they lose sight of the moral law that governs all of humanity, and they start murdering people.
Right.
They're very well known for assassinating people, going all the way back to the Messiah, Jesus Christ.
So the reason that this stuff about the administrative, the emergence of the administrative state in America is really important to the idea of a central bank is that they've made their intentions clear. There's laws against usury. There's laws against Christians looking at themselves purely as consumers. And so America is going to have a question about its basic ethics of how they see themselves, because Americanism is not consumerism. Consumerism and capitalism were created as a means of getting people to think of themselves as an economic unit. You were not an economic unit. You were a soul created for the image, in the image of God, with the purpose of serving him in heaven forever and serving each other. And so so we're going to have to go back from a usurious society to a servant society. So anyway. Yeah,
so Matt said something that I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt. What did you say?
No, I'm just saying I'm on a soapbox, and I apologize. You can reprove me at church tomorrow.
No. But I do want to not let this pass without bringing clarification about Protestantism and Catholicism. So there's a sociologist who published a book in the 40s. Can't remember his name, but he posited a theory that got quite a bit of traction. And he posited the theory that in America, because it's a relatively new nation on the world stage, there's 3 ethnicities. There's only 3. And they track with 3 religions. The 3 ethnicities are Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, and Judaism. So in America, after the 3rd generation, he argued, so America is a nation of immigrants all the way back to the 1600s. It's a nation of immigrants from Europe, and mostly Europe. And after 3 generations, every American is identifying as either a Jew or a Protestant or a Roman Catholic. So Roman Catholicism, according to the pollsters, is 20% of America. Judaism is it's in the single-digit percentage in America. I don't remember exactly what it is. Very small percentage. And Protestantism is 70%. So we are the most Protestant country on earth. And we have been since our founding as our population grew. So if that sociologist was right, the point that Matt raises, which can become contentious instantly between Roman Catholics and Protestants, is an important point that has to be discussed. And I think it's going to be discussed after this whole thing with Zionism and Israel is more or less settled.
I agree.
And right. And my feeling is that we're fast approaching that settlement in the United States of America anyway.
Yeah.
Because think about it. Everything political is now so divided that you can't get anything done. Here in Maine, school boards are having to retreat from their meeting spaces because the public is showing up ready, fit to be tied, and ready to start building hangman's, trees or whatever. It's getting to the point where the public is starting to bring ropes to school board meetings. You can't run a country on that basis. And why is that happening? Because the schools now, it's obvious to everybody, are full of governed by these left-wing, heading fast toward communism, ideas about culture and sexuality and family formation. The schools.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hey, going back to the Miriam discussion, is that notion of, you go to a school board and these people literally look at themselves as unaccountable figures. So every federal agency after 1956 had a state counterpart. And so this dependency system goes all the way from the Federal Reserve. They print the money, a program is created. In this case, in New Hampshire, you have the Department of Homeland Security, which is the federal branch, and the New Hampshire Department of Health. Now, Donald Trump will say things like, well, I'm putting it back to the states. But sorry, Donald, these are still illegal programs. They're unconstitutional. They don't have a right to exist. So he's not getting rid of the programs. Donald Trump is not dismantling the government. He's defunding them, which if you're a Bircher, you'll understand this presents great opportunities. And we as Birchers always know that whenever activities around us, it presents us wonderful opportunities as educational moments for particularly for members that we have down in Nashua. What does the defunding of your favorite federal program mean for your state? And we need to start having this question in our towns, and we're doing it through the Birch Society to say to people, why is your town broke? Why is your town so dependent on federal money? Why can't you not even turn on the lights in your state house without federal money? And it's the questions that you make people have that raise awareness versus the answers that you give them. Why are you broke? And this is why. You're broke because the government has been increasingly centralized to make every state completely dependent on the federal government, and it was done on purpose. So that's why you have the guy at the school board going, "Hey, I'm an administrator. I get to do whatever I want. I'm here to do these certain things, and you can't say anything." Well, let me just say this for the people in the freedom movement out there, and if this ever gains any traction, you got to understand. You can't have your guy as despotic leader and say you don't want this other person to be, the guy with the different jersey on saying, I don't want to be a despotic. You can't have despotism at any level because that's not the purpose of government. Okay. So you can't allow it. That becomes the moral conversation. What's going to happen next? Like you said, that conversation, you can't allow hypocrisy on your end versus and other people's as well. So that we have to get rid of the entire system. We can't allow anybody to act as despotically. So I want to show you the next slide. I want to show you where we've gotten to. If you don't mind, we can go through these pretty quickly. So what if you look at that third slide? So what the Federal Reserve did, a private bank who is vested in usury, which is was illegal in Christian Europe up until the Protestant Reformation when the bankers took over. So the federal government will produce money. They'll print it out of thin air, and the state agencies receive the money. They have compliance requirements, and then the regional and municipal associations, which were created by Charles Merriam and the progressives, they actually run everything. They actually take this money and they make sure that the towns are compliant. So everybody belongs to a municipal association. In Maine, it's the Maine MMA. And people believe, and here's what happened in America. There was so much freedom that when towns created their charters and towns created their first original articles of incorporation, they didn't have microscopic rules on how they were going to do things. They just got it done. They were good people. Morality governed them. But then you can't control a town like that. You can't be efficient. These Germans, they're always concerned with efficiency. They wanted government to be efficient. So they came up with this way of controlling local government. Most of America could be saved if you literally just started rewriting your town's articles of incorporation and any of the rules that govern your town, and then get rid of managers. Get rid of your town managers, like immediately. Get rid of every unelected official in your town, because that's the only way you're going to gain independence in America. So anyway, so when we look at, like, people think, the gimmick crowd, you look at the unelected versus the elected officials. This is a chart that you can barely see the sliver of the 0.1% of the federally elected. But we still have more unelected bureaucrats. Just in the EOP, for instance, there's over 40,000 to 50,000 employees that you never vote for. You vote for the president, and then there's this massive administration behind that, and people you never elect that are part of this body of the EOP. And then you have all these municipal associations, all these federal planning agencies, that big pie. So when clowns like the Convention of States come up and say, we got to fix Congress because Congress is immoral, Congress has no power. Congress is not the reason why. You can't sit in your little chamber in Nashua or in Augusta and go, we have to fix Congress, when you're taking their money. You're taking their money and you're part of the crime. You're part of the problem, and you're not doing your job as a state representative because you're basically complaining to somebody. You're complaining that mob bosses are killing people in your town while going, oh, well, thank you for the money. It's complete hypocrisy. These state representatives need to man up or woman up, as the case may be, and stop taking the federal money. We get mad when the Democrats do it. I mean, remember Trump's first election, and Maxine Waters is out there in California saying things like, well, Trump, your policies are not welcome here. We're not going to allow that here. She interposed. She did her job. She said, this is not constitutional. I'm not going to allow it. And she stood up for her people. And the Republicans got all upset about that. Oh, look, she's not following the leader, and it's like, well, she was doing her job. You don't like it, but the Democrats are generally better at micropolitics than the Republicans are. So let me show you the next slide real quick, Mike, if you don't mind. So so what we've ended up with is this we've lost our checks and balances, and we don't want to talk about that in America. Instead of having this federalism where it's layer cake, dual federalism, where you have divisions in the government, between the federal and the state, and checks and balance, you have what's called marble cake federalism, where the federal government is shot through at every level. So the goal in America for the freedom fighters in America is to replace the checks and balances and kick the Federal Reserve out of your town. Stop taking their money. The big thing that people will say is, oh, well, somebody else will take the money. Too bad. You want blood money? If you want to build a tot lot in your town that taxed every American, because that's what you're doing. Okay. You're not taking money from your town. You're taking it from every taxpayer in America, and you are responsible for their poverty. And that's why we hand out these scorecards, because the scorecards, we went out yesterday and we handed a bunch out, got started, and it'll show you that the tax bill, the bill right now is $38 million. $38 trillion. That amounts to $323,000 per taxpayer in America. We have a conversation we could have with the Democrats. Stop trying to cross the aisle on complicated issues. These people, these bankers, are making everybody broke. That's the problem. Okay.
So Matt, I was thinking earlier this year of sitting on the budget committee for my little town of about a couple thousand people. And I was just out walking in my neighborhood, which I love to do. And an older gentleman, a little older than me, approached me and walking his dog. And I told him I was thinking of budget committee. And I said, you got any ideas? What do you think? And he said, look, we waste so much money. He said, look, I would be willing to take responsibility for the street in front of my house in terms of sweeping the sand off and maybe even filling the potholes, if that would help the town to be able. And those kind of ideas are infinite out there.
Yes.
They are infinite, and the number of people of goodwill in my little town in Maine is also high. The number is very high of people of goodwill, people who want what's good, true, and beautiful, people who want to be responsible. But Matt, we're living, like you say, with this marble cake idea of government, where the federal government is shot through the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, the question is, if you look historically, are large metropolitan cities natural in the absence of a centralized government? And I would argue that it's not. And many anthropologists would agree with that in the absence of, large centralized systems, you don't end up with sprawling metropolitans. I mean, New York City was the first place for, the planning agencies. That was the trial run. And look at New York City is this giant habit trail where the lives of the people are siphoned out, where they're happy to drive their car to their job, where they're 60% of it goes back to a private banker, and then when they're not done giving all their money, they go to a store that's owned by BlackRock or Vanguard, and they call this freedom. They call this I'm practicing democracy. You are a slave and a habit trail. They're going to come and they're going to change the cedar chippings on the bottom of your cage in your little place that you live, and you're going to be able to go to work, but you are a slave. And many people, this is the big conversation, Mike, that a lot of people in the freedom movement aren't willing to have, is that how we are not dealing with people who are Democrats or Republicans. We're dealing with people that are willing to be slaves and people that are not willing to be slaves. That's all there is
So
to it.
true.
And so the people that aren't willing to be slaves, they're going to, the only way that we're going to get out of this is Christian charity. That is the only way. Service to God, service to each other. And too many times you hear these people talking about whether or not they like each other. Come on, grow up, people. I don't like the freedom movement, so let's.
What a great point, Matt. What a great point. Yeah. Make it. It was so good. You need to make it again. Go ahead. Or maybe Charles. Charles can make it.
I was it's when your medication wears off, suddenly you're really smart. It's a lot of fun. You don't know what's going to come out, right? No, we're not going to save America unless we approach a distributive state, which I recommend everybody read, either Economics for Helen or or Distributism for Dorothy, or they read, The Utopia of Usurers by G.K. Chesterton, because we're not going to get out of this without serving God. And you're not serving God. I'm sorry. I don't know who you are out there. Going to the football stadium and spending $4,000 to watch a bunch of guys and half nude women run around is, I'm sorry, that's not Christian society. Think about what you can do with the amount of money that is spent at a football stadium, like in DC, the Washington, whatever they are now, Redskins, I don't even know what they're called, 75,000 people. And these same 75,000 people will sit around watching Tucker Carlson for 3 hours and going, oh my gosh, my government is so bad. Well, here's what you need. You need self-reliant towns. And we're going to work on this all across America. We're going to start creating self-reliant towns where people can feed their poor, take care of their own stuff, and live. We need to live like the Amish for this to stop.
We've reached the point, Matt, where it's not going to be a choice that we can make.
Yes, right.
We are either going to start caring for one another, or people are going to start dying in much bigger numbers.
Yes.
This week I'm getting my property tax bill. I'm 64 years old, approaching the need to make decisions about Medicare and Medicaid and all that kind of stuff. My wife is spending hours trying to understand it. It's inscrutable. It's beyond understanding. And then our electric bills in Maine. We're used to paying an electric bill here in my little residence of about $70-$80 a month. My electric bill last month was $300, and we haven't upped our usage. Maine is collapsing. I don't know how people are I went and talked to my son yesterday, and he's doing very well for himself. He's a penetration tester for the Defense Department in computers. And he started listing the economic changes in his occupation. And I was starting to really almost start worrying. He's got 4 young children, my grandchildren. And thank God I hate to say this because I'm for peace, but thank God he works for the Defense Department. I mean, I almost feel like that's like the only place you can work now where you might make a living wage, possibly, maybe. Yeah,
well, and that's the goal. Like if you have people there's certain people that are always unaffected by economic downturns, and that's people in the government and in Hollywood. So what does that tell you? I mean, remember the Great Depression. I mean, Hollywood was thriving. They still had their balls. They were still giving each other little pagan statues to reward each other for serving Moloch or whoever, or Baal, whoever these Hollywood people worship. And we do this like this. Let me just bring the attention to people like Charlie, if you don't mind. I know we've been talking for a little bit. Charlie,
no, please do. Yeah.
Charlie and Linda Landry, you come into the John Birch Society and you realize that you're in an organization that is going to require us to love each other and serve each other. That's what it was for me, and we come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, and religious understandings. And what I found is that, that I don't survive doing what I'm doing without good people like this around me. They are gold. These people this is what you need to surround yourself with, people that are dedicated to serving Christ and others. That's it. That's how this works. And that's who Linda Landry. So these two people that you see right in front of you, are who you want to surround yourself with. Not egomaniacs, not crazy people, people that love and want to serve their community. So just want to say that.
So you guys have made a great audience. Time for you to speak, Charles. Linda, go ahead.
I can't learn anything when I'm talking. I got to listen to you guys.
Perfect.
Well,
Listen to us. Listen to us, influencers. Go ahead.
Matt does great presentations, and you saw a few slides of those. And we have to have more of these presentations around New England, and because people's eyes are being opened, and they got to know why this stuff's happening and how to deal with it, and know that they're not alone. And that's the big thing. People feel alone, and they think they're the only ones that feel this way. I mean, the stuff that he teaches, and including the Constitution class that we offer too, is you can see it in our local towns. When you look, if you stay in your little beehive at home and do nothing, you won't see anything. But when you go out and talk to people, you go to town meetings, you see this playing out. So the more educated we are, and the more we can influence people, we have to do it in a humble way, not with an attitude, and just be patient, because people need to have their eyes open. They don't know what they don't know, and so we have to have like a little campaign to educate people all over New England and Massachusetts. I'm looking forward to having more of these presentations.
So I've spent 40 years in politics in New England, and for 20 years, I fought the woke movement on the front pages of Maine's legacy media before the internet got spun up. And I was the leader of the oldest Protestant evangelical institution in Maine that had anything to do with politics. It's called the Christian Civic League of Maine, and it still exists today. I resigned in 2009. When I was leading it, and I was arguing whether sexual orientation should be added to the Maine Human Rights Act, and our position, the position I represented with the board's authorization and the authorization of the membership, the statewide membership, was that sexual orientation should not be added to the Maine Human Rights Act. It's an imprudent move. It's not wise. And so anyway, I had a degree in philosophy, so I could sound really, I could talk to anybody, and I could sound reasonable and whatever. And I blow dried my hair then. I didn't wear a hat, and I wore a suit and a tie. And so the women listened to me. They liked me because I looked nice and safe.
Mike has very luscious hair. I want everybody to know.
I looked nice, and I looked civil, and I sounded like I knew what I was talking about. And it worked, but until it didn't work. And when it didn't work, it was Marxism, good old-fashioned 19th century Marxist tactics that was used, and an immense amount of money, millions of dollars, to make the issue, to dissolve the issue of gay rights, the debate, down to one personality. And guess who that personality was? Me. So the debate in Maine was dissolved down to this personal animus that Mike Heath had. And he's the only guy in Maine who feels this way. And the reason I resigned is because all the pastors abandoned me. They believed it. They bought it. They bought into the propaganda. Yeah. and I just got sick to death of having my friends come to me and say, Mike, we agree with you, but it's just your tone and style, Mike.
Yeah.
So now guess what? It's been 20 years. And of course, now 30% of the kids in Maine public schools are identifying as woke, as members of the LGBTQ furry whatever community. So now I am backing the True Slinger with 100% backing on X, and he's a gap-toothed hillbilly from Tennessee who lives in the woods of Maine, central Maine, and he live streams every morning from his home with his wife who has Parkinson's. He's in his early 60s, calls himself the Truth Slinger. He's a Protestant preacher, even and he wears a funny looking patriotic cowboy hat. His gap teeth. He just has front teeth pulled out. And I am so excited to support this guy. He's headed to Maine's. Well, I can't announce that publicly yet.
Yeah.
But he's going to he's going to school board meetings, and he's using polemics. He's using political theater to point out the absurdity of where we are now, of where Maine is now, with its children.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, they didn't have a discussion, Mike, a very long time ago, and you were right on the cusp of it. I mean, obviously you were there, and as you know, as the John Birch Society was as well. Years ago, we stood against the civil rights movement. Why? Because there's no classes of people. Once you start creating black people, you know, this rights, that rights, then the natural progression is that you can start creating. I mean, they went from protecting classes of people to creating classes of people.
right.
That's what they did. And that was
and now legally, it's the number of classes of people is infinite by definition. Right. It's infinite under this gender definition. There's an infinite number of genders now. Every individual has the right to declare themselves according to something called gender. I mean, it's total. People say it's mental illness. To me, it obviously goes beyond that. It's evil. This is moral evil. This is evil.
It
right?
is. Yeah. I mean, and that has been the whole full intent of the globalists. You can't control people who are in their right mind, you know, who have a diffused idea of purpose. And yes, when you look at what the globalists are doing, primarily their job, you know, through their consumerism, capitalism, and all this, a man as an economic unit, you know, and you saw what Charles Merriam did. You know, you're just a cog in a wheel. These people can't hear the voice of God. We call it prevenient grace in theological circles, you know, that God is constantly talking to the soul. But when the voice out here in the media is so loud, you're a cat, you're this, you're that. That's the idea. You got to silence the voice of God. You have to silence the Holy Spirit. That's what they have to do. So I talk about awakening people, you know, and you hear a lot of this in, you know, the Protestant circles. We have to have a big awakening. I'm not talking about the same thing. I'm talking about this idea that we have to continually be that voice of God in people's ears. That's what I went out to yesterday, Mike. I sat with people. I said, you see this number? We're all in trouble. And everybody agreed. And the one guy there at the one dealership went in. I handed him a new member packet. I said, listen, when you've had enough, give me a call, because you have 4 children and they're being conscripted into slavery. I have a moral obligation to tell you what's going to happen to you and your family in the next 3 years. That's the purpose. So people will look at the scorecard that we put out and they'll go, this doesn't mean anything. It's a means of having a conversation that nobody else wants to have. I talk to these young women at the colleges. I talk to these young kids in the stores. I'll go into the store if they're alone at the front counter. I'll say, you see that number? You see that number right there? That's you. And I say it very softly. That's what you owe to the government, who's making poor decisions about the use of your money. And that's the language that everybody should start agreeing on, because we are broke. And, you know, of course, you're always going to have people like these dirtbags like Rick Gervais, you know, well, I feel proud about giving my money to, you know, in slavery, a little bit of something back to we're not talking about a little bit of something anymore. We're talking about 70% of your life. You're being suctioned like they might as well just hang us like in chambers, like when they did that, you know, in the Matrix, and just, you know, because that's all you are. You're just a commodity to these people.
I promised Matt that we go for around an hour. We're up to 1 hour and 4 minutes, and I can go all day long, but people have attention spans, and and we're going to do this again next Friday. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, we'll do it again. 10 o'clock. It'll be our little Friday soiree. You know, I don't know, soiree. No, that sounded gay. I meant like. You know,
don't be thinking gay.
What that word means. I know it's French. I was looking for a word that meant like, hey, we're going to hang out. So whatever that is, if your readers want to put it in the comments, that's awesome. So,
And Charles and Linda, you're welcome to join us. Welcome anytime. And I'll be doing, and I'll let, you guys have been such a great audience. I'll give you guys the last word. I'll give you, Linda, and then Charles, you'll get the last word, and I'll wrap the show after that. So my next show is going to be, who knows, I might do one this afternoon. I don't know. But you can check out my YouTube channel, my X channel, and then also michaelheath.tv. So if X throws me off, or the other one, YouTube throws me off, then I'm still going to be at michaelheath.tv because they can't turn me off. Nobody can turn that off because I own it. So Linda, you first, and then Charles, and then I'll wrap the show.
Well, the mission of JBS is to educate people and show them solutions, and they have to be educated first. So I just went to a town meeting, and the people there are not educated. There's about a third of the people that think independently and will at the town meeting and voted that way, and the other 2/3 are just, thinking like socialists, and we need the money, so let's do whatever the state says. So we have a lot of work to do. If they were educated about what's really going on in the country and what the government was originally set up as, they wouldn't have voted the way they did. So education's important. And
It's all yours, Charles.
the other thing is, I just want to mention, this is along the lines of living like a Christian. Part of the reason they vote the way they do is fear. So the town government, or such as it is, will appeal to fear. And oh my gosh, we're going to lose the money. We're going to go broke. We're going to, we need the state money. We need the federal money. And they use fear to get people to vote the way they are. And if you're a Christian and you really trust God, you will not live in fear.
There's a saying, and Charles, it's your turn. FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And there's never been an instrument of technology more powerful at stirring up FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt than the internet and these social media platforms, powered by algorithms and now governed by artificial intelligence. This is a very toxic brew. It's extremely dangerous, and it's obviously being employed and deployed as a weapon against you to keep you in a state of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Charles, last word.
We got to get out and talk to people. That's it. Even internet, whatever, you still got to go talk to people. Wherever, well, like Matt said, wherever he meets them.
Yep.
You just
and one thing you're going to find, Charles, now is I'm not alone in understanding what I just said about FUD and about algorithms and about artificial intelligence. More and more people are waking up to this threat every single minute now. And in order to address it, people who are familiar with the internet and these platforms are starting to use they're starting to use localism as the major influence in deciding what they're going to trust online, who they're going to listen to online. So I predict in coming months and years, these influencers, as they're called, like Candace and Tucker and others, these influencers who are at a distance from us are going to lose a little bit of power. They're going to remain powerful. We're going to continue to listen to media voices. But you're going to see a rise in the power of local officials, local people, because people don't know who to trust now. And they're all scrolling their phone. They're all on the laptop. They're all on the computer. They're all using the internet because they have to for work or for whatever. And increasingly, they're getting to the point where if they see it on a screen, they don't trust it unless they can touch it, unless they can touch it unless they know it, unless it's right there. And then they can confirm that it's not a fake video made by AI or whatever, right? Because they can touch it. They can talk to it. They can see it. It can be they can integrate it into their life without using a screen. You're going to see this. I predict you're going to see, this is really starting to take off. What I'm saying is really starting to take off.
Michael, there's a local activist in Massachusetts that ran for office and was really given the bums the boot by his own party. He says the future is offline, and this guy's a really educated man. I mean, he uses the internet. He's a scientist, and he always says that the future's offline.
Yeah, I agree, and it's beginning to happen. And so what's that mean? You know, I'm going to do a bunch of shows on this. You know, what's it mean? For example, does it mean you throw your cell phone away? You know, you throw your smartphone away and you stop using it? Maybe it does mean that. And God bless you if you can make that happen. Really, I mean that. God bless you if you can make that happen. But if you can't make it happen, then you and I need to talk about what is on this phone. It's called Graphene OS. You've never heard of it. But I can turn all the sensors off with a button. And you're starting to see some of this stuff show up in standard Android and in standard operating systems because people are demanding it. They're saying, I don't want this thing to be all listening to me all the time, whatever. And so the big tech companies are being forced to change these things so that you can have your privacy back, and so they're not surveillance devices. So we're moving into a period of intense and very fast change, and not all of it is doom and gloom. Not all of it is evil and bad and dark. There is light, and you guys, Charles and Linda and Matt, are what did George Bush say? 1,000 points of light, or whatever it was.
That's what I screwed up too quick. I see 1,000 points of light, and you know, my all the warning bells are going off. You know, start seeing stars. Oh my gosh! Okay, that was a great trip. Anyway, thanks, Mike.
Thank you guys for joining me, and thank you, audience out there. And just go to, if you want to subscribe to my email. I'll be announcing when I'm going to do it next. And go to my YouTube channel and X and whatever. And so I've got 2, 3, 4. I've got at least 6 or 7 more talking points, Matt. So you won't have to stay up all night next week. And
yeah. Well, my brain will probably. But thank you, Michael. Thank you for hanging out. I really appreciate it. I'll see you soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. God bless you all.
Thanks, buddy. Bye.
All right.